There he is. Oh yeah, baby. There we go. Haha. That feels like a nice one. That feels like a nice one. Bring it in here. Well, how's it going, folks, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're gonna talk about one of my favorite little pond lures, and that is the swimming worm. Look at that beautiful fish. That is awesome. What the heck is the swimming worm, and how can you use it to your advantage to catch more fish? My name is Tyler Anderson, and I say we learn something today. How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Tyler Anderson, and I make it my goal on my YouTube channel called 𝗙𝗃𝗋𝗋Fishing to help you guys become better bass anglers with every single video you watch, and that is exactly the same goal that I have here. You know, today we're going to talk about a topic that I think is undervalued and definitely underutilized in the bass fishing community, and something that I think you guys can use to catch more fish. So if you guys are not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment below, and let's get started. So around this great country, we have tons of ponds. I think the majority of the bass fishing community is definitely bank and pond anglers, and one of the most popular lures to throw in a pond is a Texas rigged 𝗙ecie, or I guess you could kind of broaden it to Texas rigged worm in general. And the Texas rigged 𝗙cie gets thrown a ton all across the country, and there's definitely a reason why. It is a fish catcher. I don't care where you are, dirty water, clear water, grass, wood, nothing on the bottom. A Texas rigged 𝗙cie just catches fish, but there will be times, especially in the summer or the fall, a ton of people are fishing. You know, here with COVID-19, a lot of people picked up fishing for the first time, and a 𝗙cie is one of the first worms they picked up. So the bass in your pond may have seen a lot of the same worm. And even though bass's brains are pretty dang small, about the size of a pea, a bass definitely has a tendency to not bite certain lures when it sees it a ton, especially when it falls for it a ton. So if you're fishing a highly pressured pond, this video is for you guys. And these tips, of course, can be applied to you guys fishing from a bass boat as well. This definitely applies for you guys that fish lakes. But for the pond guys, I think the swimming worm is something that not a lot of people throw, and I think can trigger those bass that have seen the same exact lures over and over again to biting. If you were to take off the little end of the worm here that actually causes the swimming action, and you were to pinch it off, you literally have a Texas rigged 𝗙cie. So the only difference between a 𝗙cie and this is that you have a little rage tail on the end. And there's just something about slowly swimming that worm in and around shallow and deep cover that just gets those bass to react when they've seen the same exact things over and over again. So I'm gonna show you guys exactly how to rig it, then we're gonna go on the water, show you how to fish it, and then of course show you some fish catches as well. So it is a standard Texas rig. I have a 4/0 wide gap hook right here, as hopefully you guys can see. I'm working with a new lens today, so we're gonna see how it works. But I'm gonna do a standard Texas rig. So I'm gonna poke it in the top of the worm, go about, I don't know, 1/2 inch, poke it out, thread the hook all the way through, and make sure you bury the knot. I use a Palomar knot. If you bury the knot in the worm, I will line it up exactly where I think the hook is supposed to poke through, just like that, where the hook bends. I'm gonna grab the worm, shove the hook on through, and of course, put the hook back into the worm, and you have yourself a perfect Texas rig. Now, I'm a big proponent of weightless soft plastics. I think weightless soft plastics are the way to go in ponds, but the problem with this worm weightless is that you cannot achieve the proper swimming action that this worm was designed for. And so I have a 1/16 ounce tungsten weight and a bobber stopper to make sure the weight is pegged to the Texas rig. I'm gonna have a video coming out on my YouTube channel very soon about fishing weights for Texas rigs and in which situations I peg, unpeg, or don't use a weight at all. But in this situation, I want the weight to be on the worm, because as I'm swimming the worm and it's going up and over cover and grass, wood, I don't want the weight to separate and cause the worm to have a different action at certain points in the cast than it did in the beginning. And so I want the weight to be up against the worm. That way when it's swimming, the tail can be kicking and it can get those fish to bite. Now when it comes to location, where to throw this worm, as I mentioned several times already, I love using this around shallow vegetation and shallow wood. It definitely has a place in my arsenal, more on a Carolina rig, a heavier Texas rig, maybe a wobble head, a football wobble head jig out deep. But at least for most of my pond fishing scenarios, I'm gonna be casting this thing pretty dang shallow, reeling it right along the side of cover, and those bass cannot resist it. You know, they see the same exact worms all the time, and just a little bit of differentiation in your worm can oftentimes get fish to bite that nobody else can. The gear that I throw the swimming worm on is a 7.2 medium action rod. similar to like a crankbait or a chatterbait, I don't want to absolutely rail on those fish. It'll pull the hook out of their mouths. And with a swimming worm, I kind of want to treat it like a swim jig. So if it's heavier cover, I'm going to throw a 7.2, 7.3 medium heavy, but this pond today is fairly open with just some light vegetation here and there, and so a 7.2 medium works for me. I've got a relatively normal gear ratio reel. I like the 7.5 to 1, but I have a 6.8 to 1 today. If your fish are lethargic, reel it very slow. And if your fish are very, very active, of course, increase your gear ratio and reel a little bit faster. And then the line that I have on here is, I think, 15-pound fluorocarbon line. I love fluorocarbon. Feel free to throw braid if you have dingier water, but I think just in order to trick these fish that have seen so many of the same worms, I would recommend throwing it on 15 to 17-pound fluorocarbon. So with all that out of the way, I say we hop on the water, of course, catch some fish, and show you guys how to swim the worm. So when it comes to retrieving a swimming worm, it is just that. It is a worm that you swim, as I talked about. And so I'm gonna cast it out there. Of course, it is very versatile, so you can hop it, you can jig it. But my favorite way to work it is by casting it out there, letting it hit the bottom. As always, let your soft plastics hit the bottom in most situations, and then I'm going to start slowly reeling. Literally keeping that worm as close to the bottom as I can. And as soon as I get to a piece of cover, like a weed line, a lay down log, I'm gonna kind of speed it up and allow that worm to kind of swim up over the piece of cover, and then I'll let it sink down to the bottom over the front side of it. So coming out the back side, let it sink on the front. Once it gets back to the bottom, continue the slow reel. And a lot of the times those fish are gonna nab it as soon as it gets to the front side of a piece of cover, and they kind of get their reaction strike as it goes up the front, or right as you let it sink off the backside. Those fish are just waiting for an opportune time to feed on something, and if they've seen the same worms all the time, seeing one with a little bit different action, a little bit different profile, can oftentimes lead to increased success. And that's what we're all about in this community. We want to catch more fish. Yeah, that's a... Gosh, there's one right there. Holy cow. Wow, not a bad one. Oh my gosh, I just made a horrible decision. I cast over all these trees. Did he get off? He got off. There's one right there, right in the grass. That was so cool. I saw that fish bust, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make a cast over there. I was swimming it right through the grass, and he ate it. I don't think it's a bad one. I definitely have them in some grass, which honestly can be a good thing sometimes, because it kind of wraps them up and makes them come in nice and easy. Oh, we got a bass. She's chunky. She's a chunky girl. Yes, there we go. These fish in here are just so beautiful and healthy. I mean, look at that. That thing weighs 2 pounds, and it's like 14 inches. It definitely pays off to be observant when you're on the water, and even if you think a little splash was just a bluegill or a small bait fish, it's possible that it was a bass like that one, and you were rewarded. So let's get this guy back in the water. When you're bank fishing, you always got to make sure you get a good footing, because it's always been a problem when you set the hook and your feet slip on the gravel, on the sand, whatever you're on, the mud. I always make sure when I'm bank fishing to get myself a good footing. Bass fishing is a full body sport, not just leaning back with the hook. You got to be in position for the whole shebang. The same thing can be said about life. You know, life throws you a bunch of challenges. You got to have your feet set on a solid ground so you're prepared to withstand the test. You didn't know by subscribing to this channel, you're getting life advice from your boy TRF as well. That comes free of charge. Oh, there's one. There's one. There we go. As I'm swimming it. Oh no. Oh, it's a little snaky snake. You know what though, they fight hard. Well folks, if you're up north, like I am right now, you can catch some non-bass as well on this thing. As you can tell, this pike wanted everything to do with the swimming worm. Come on, get your mouth open so I can see, so I can show the folks at home. Well, you understand, he ate it good. Beautiful little pike. Really, really pretty colors. Beautiful, beautiful tail he's got, but we're gonna let this snake go. You are free, there you go. Oh, there's one, there's one. Get over here, buddy. That was such a small tick, but that was awesome. Bring it in, you fatty. Yes. Heck yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today on the water. Catching fish like this, I am never going to complain. Sure, they're not 4 or 5 pounders, but so beautiful and thick, and catching them in one of my favorite ways in a pond, the swimming worm, is just is a pleasure. So if you guys enjoyed, hit that subscribe button. Head over to my channel, Tyler's Real Fishing, where I love to teach you guys 3 times a week all sorts of tactics that can help you become better bass anglers. And man, what a time.